Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining our third global webcast on EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program today. During our today's session, we will discuss the program itself, how it provides a pathway to permanent residence in the United States through investment. We'll cover various aspects of the program, including eligibility, investment requirements, application process, which type of projects are eligible for the program, and how to choose such projects. We will also share our thoughts on what to expect after the U.S. election, and will there be any changes to the program after January 2025. For those of you who see me for the first time, my name is Dmitro. I advise private high net worth individuals and their families on various citizenship and residence by investment strategies here in beautiful Vienna at our Henlin Partners Austrian office. My work is also focused predominantly on investment migration to the US, and I'm very happy to guide you through the benefits and requirements of the US EB-5 program. Today, I'm joined by two fantastic experts in the EB-5 industry, Mr. George Gainey, an extremely experienced immigration attorney and the founding partner at Gainey Law Group. He will provide insights into the legal aspects of EB-5 program with a particular focus on application process and eligibility requirements. Also with us today is Jeff DeSico, Chief Operational Officer at Golden Gate Global Regional Center, who will share how Golden Gate's projects align with the EB-5 landscape, how to choose the project, and how they usually structure them. Now, a few words about Henlin Partners for those of you who are not familiar with us. So Henlin Partners is the global leading company in residence and citizenship planning, helping high net worth individuals and families find tailored solutions for their residency and citizenship goals. With now over 60 offices globally and way over 25 years of experience, we have facilitated around $15 billion in foreign direct investment and helped over 25,000 clients to diversify their residence and citizenship portfolio. Beyond residency solutions, we also provide a set of additional services, including concierge support for lifestyle needs, education consulting to help families find the best opportunities for their kids. Another big part of our business is government advisory practice, where we work with various countries and governments to design, implement, or improve investment migration programs. US EB-5 program is just a part of our broad portfolio, which now covers over 40 jurisdictions, which offer citizenship or residence by investment, including the recently launched Nauru Citizenship by Investment program. Our main goal here at Henley is to ensure that we guide our clients through every step of the journey, from eligibility assessment, choosing the right jurisdiction, which aligns with the investor's plans and goals, and also post-citizenship or post-residency support. Also, we at Henlin Partners spend a lot of resources and time on our research and development work, and regularly publish various reports, which you can see and download from our website. Here on this slide, you can see a part of our wealth migration report. The data shows the number of millionaires who have moved to a new country since 2013, staying there for at least 6 months. Millionaire migration grew steadily until 2020, when the COVID pandemic slowed it down. Then by 2022, the trend rebounded with record numbers recorded last year in 2023. And this year data in 2025 forecasts suggest the growth to be continued. This year is also set to be a break record in global wealth migration. Geopolitical conflicts, wars, economic uncertainty, social instability are driving millionaires to seek safer countries for their assets, for their wealth and families. The ongoing wars in Ukraine, Israel, and Gaza involving major powers and risks becoming larger regional or global conflicts. An estimated 128,000 millionaires will relocate this year, by the end of this year, surpassing the previous record of 120,000. This is 16% rise from the pre-pandemic figure in 2019. And the wave of migration highlights major global changes in wealth and power, with significant effect on the countries millionaires leave and those countries they move into. These wealthy migrants bring not only their money, but also skills, networks, and energy that boosts local economies. And now I'm going to show you which countries pay the biggest number of millionaires who move into this country. On this slide is that data sets represent the top 10 countries globally in terms of projected net inflow of millionaires for this year, 2024. Million immigration is the leading indicator of the overall health of the country and its economy. For the third year running, the UAE takes the first place as the world's leading wealth magnet, with a record-breaking of 6,700 high net worth migrants expected to make Emirates their home by the end of this year. Right behind the UAE stands the United States of America, with the projected around 4,000 millionaires who will move there by the end of this year. Important to say that we refer millionaires and high net worth individuals to those who have liquid investable assets of at least $1 million or more. This data sets represent the top 10 countries or territories globally in terms of projected net outflows of millionaires for this year, 2024. The UK is expected to see a net loss of approximately 10,000 millionaires, second only after China worldwide, more than double of 4,200 who left the country last year, which was itself another record-breaking year. China, India, South Korea are on a track to be the biggest millionaire losers globally, with quite significant outflow numbers that you can see on your screen right now. And of course, historically, citizens of these countries showed their biggest demand in moving to the US under the EB-5 Investor Program. As for the US passport, important to say that according to our Henley & Partners Passport Index, US passport has always been ranked in the top 10 of the best passports in the world, which is another magnet for those who seek permanent residence and hopefully citizenship in the country. Now let's move deeper into the EB-5 program itself. So for anyone new to the EB-5 program, it's the US immigration pathway that allows qualified investors and their families to obtain the US green card. The program was originally designed and implemented by the US government early in the 1990s to attract foreign capital and create jobs for the US workers, giving the qualified investor the right to become a permanent resident as a return. So what benefits does EB-5 program give to the investors and their families? Well, it's obvious that it's the right to settle, live, work, study, or do business in any of the 50 states. It's the possibility to obtain a green card, as mentioned before, get access to a range of top-tier schools and universities. Investors, of course, can apply together with their close family members, a spouse and kids who are under 21 years old and not married. And of course, there's an option to apply for the US citizenship after 5 years of permanent residency. The EB-5 program was heavily improved back in 2022 after the RIA, or the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act, introduced essential changes to the EB-5 program. This legislation was designed to increase transparency and investor protection. For example, it mandates greater oversight of the regional centers, stricter fund management rules, and established a structured processing timeline. By addressing these concerns, the RIA has helped bring even more trust into the EB-5 program, making it more attractive and a secure option for international investors. Over the past year, we've seen the heightened interest in the EB-5 program. This demand, as mentioned before, is due part to the global environment, wars, economic shifts, other geopolitical factors. So individuals and families are seeking stability and growth in the new markets. Also, in response to the RIA reform, which we have made EB-5 a more transparent and secure and predictable program. So, a few words on the eligibility requirements, which we will cover in more detail in just a minute. So, to qualify, investors must take a minimum investment of 800,000 US dollars into a targeted employment area or 1,050,000 US dollars in the non-targeted employment area, creating at least 10 full-time jobs for the US workers. This combination of investment with job creation makes EB-5 a unique program as it directly supports the US economy and at the same time provides reliable residency route for the investors. Of course, funds must come from 100% lawful source, and George will also cover this thing in a few minutes more deeply. The funds should stay in the particular project for a few years, depending on how the project is structured, and it can be something in between 3 to 5 years usually. So now we're going to move to the to various legal and processing aspects, and I'm happy to give a word to George. Feel free to drop me a message to find out more about US or any other residence or citizen program. You can scan our QR code on the right-hand side of the screen and drop me a WhatsApp or email. Also, please don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A section down below. We will be happy to address those questions after we've finished the presentation. So, Mr. Gainey, please, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Sure. Thanks, Dimitro. Pleasure to be here. Thanks to everyone for joining today. These are pretty interesting and exciting times in the United States, especially in regards to U.S. immigration. So again, thanks to Dimitro for hosting this and for, Henley and Partners for putting this on and everyone for joining. Today, I'm just going to run through the general overview of EB-5, which again is a U.S. residency option, meaning that an individual and their family members obtain a green card in the U.S. A little bit of background. Again, my name is George Gainey. I run a private client U.S. immigration law firm. We're located in Washington, D.C. And because of the nature of our clients, we work on a lot of investment-based immigration options and solutions, one of those being EB-5, which we will discuss in detail today. So this is just a little overview as to where we're going to go. We'll talk briefly about basic EB-5 requirements. We'll discuss something called adjustment of status and compare that to consular processing. We'll touch on timelines and maybe predictions for what's going to happen January 20th and beyond in the EB-5 space, and then just try to summarize everything and look at mechanics of EB-5, kind of put everything together and understand how all the parts function jointly. So again, EB-5 is a green card category, and it has two very basic seeming requirements, which are, of course, more complex than they seem. But at a very fundamental level, those requirements are the investment of a minimum of $800,000 and the creation of 10 new full-time jobs in the United States. When we talk about an $800,000 investment, those funds have to be, maybe not obviously, but from a lawful source. And they have to be invested personally by the individual who's actually going to petition for this green card. That means that we can't use a corporate entity or a structure. In some cases, we can use funds from a trust to make the investment, as long as they actually legally belong to the petitioner. But typically, the funds are liquid. They're invested by the individual client, and we do lawful source of funds. And just a very brief analogy for lawful source of funds: if you think of the $800,000 to be invested sitting in a certificate of deposit or a high yield savings account, whatever, think of that as fruit. We need to explain and document the tree that gave us the fruit, in addition to the seed or the sapling that grew into the tree that gave us the fruit. And so we work very closely with clients to document sort of the life cycle of the source of funds, because that's what's going to set them up for success over the long term of their EB-5 visa petition. One more thing on source of funds. The funds can be gifted from a family member, for example, to another family member to be used for an EB-5 qualifying investment. The funds can be the proceeds of a loan secured by assets that the client owns, or it can also be an unsecured loan. So sometimes we see family members gifting funds or lending funds to another person so that they can complete their EB-5 qualifying investment. When we talk about the creation of jobs, 10 new full-time jobs, there are two ways to demonstrate job creation. One is to open your own business in the US, invest $800,000 into that business, and hire on payroll as your own employee 10 individuals. So you create 10 new full-time jobs in the US, 35 hours a week. They're W-2 employees, meaning they're actually on your payroll. They're not sort of subcontracted. You don't count, if you hire a cleaning lady for an office, that's, you use a service to do that. That doesn't count as your employee. And you have to keep, at least 10 people on payroll for about 2.5 years, I would say. Congress, knowing that that was complicated and wanting to encourage, foreign direct investment to the United States that has a job creating element to it, created something called the Regional Center Program. And Jeff will talk about, what a successful regional center looks like and what their, solid projects look like, et cetera. But a regional center has a license from the federal government. It's not owned by the federal government. It's just licensed by the federal government. And that allows them to pool investment from disparate individuals who are interested in EB-5 green card, and then disperse those funds, make sure that they're spent in a way that's going to create jobs, and then count those jobs that have been created indirectly or that have been induced in a particular part of the United States. So they go out and they hire a very talented economist. They conduct an econometric study that relies on an input-output model. And that's how the 10 new jobs are calculated under a regional center model. That's of great benefit to our clients because it means that they don't have to go out and start a business in the United States, create 10 jobs, hire people, deal with all the headaches. It's a much more passive option. So that's what we see. I would say about 99.5% of our clients end up making an investment through regional center and counting jobs that have been created indirectly by the regional center using those funds in a way that'll generate jobs in the United States, typically through some type of construction, whether it's commercial real estate, residential, infrastructure, hospitality, whatever it is. Maybe it helps take a quick step back and just talk about green card processing generally to get this concept across. Again, EB-5 is a green card, and in every green card process, there are two phases. There's the petition phase, and then there's the application phase. At the petition phase, that's where the individual client lays out how it is that he or she specifically qualifies for a green card. So everybody does something different, meaning that one client might say, I want an Olympic medal in archery or fencing, and so I qualify for a green card. Another client might say, a business in the United States has a job opening for me. They can't find a U.S. citizen to fill it. Therefore, I qualify for a green card. In the case of EB-5, again, basic requirements, $800,000 investment, creation of 10 new full-time jobs in the United States. That's how I qualify for a green card. So at the petition phase, everybody does something different. At the application phase, everybody does the same thing. It's biographic documents, background checks, medical exam. It's a standardized process to make sure that this individual doesn't have basically any criminal history or any prior U.S. immigration status violations that would prevent them from obtaining a green card. For the typical client who's outside the United States, we file the visa petition, wait for it to be approved, and then we complete the application phase at a U.S. consulate abroad. If, however, the client is inside the United States with a visa pursuant, to a lawful entry with a visa, we can complete something called adjustment of status. And not only that, we can do something called a concurrent filing with adjustment of status. That means that we file the petition and the application at the same time from inside the United States. Additionally, we file a request for work and travel authorization. And that work and travel authorization bridges the client over until they actually have their petition and their application approved. This is a very interesting option for what we see mostly students who are in the US who don't want to deal with OPT, STEM OPT extension. Maybe that goes away under the Trump administration. They don't want to deal with, having to enter the H-1B lottery. They want to be competitive when they're getting ready to finish their studies and actually apply for jobs. And so if they have a work authorization that's totally independent of their student visa, totally independent of, an employer sponsoring them, it puts them in a much better position. So we see students really interested in this. And then we also see clients who are in the US with their family members. We see a lot of our E2 clients, people who have made an investment and gotten an E2 visa, pursue this. And then clients who have a work, an employer sponsored visa, so an L1 visa or an H1B visa, particularly if they're subject to a backlog. This can be a really great option. Putting everything together here a little bit, $800,000 investment that's made with into a wholly owned subsidiary of the regional center, which acts to pool funds from lots of different EB-5 investors, clients who are interested in a green card. The regional center makes sure that the funds are spent in a way that will create 10 new full-time jobs per investor, typically through a loan or an equity investment in some type of real estate construction project. And because we have an $800,000 investment, the creation of 10 new full-time jobs in the United States, that renders us our green card. And then, Dimitro, maybe just talk about timelines. We'll go back, one slide. In a consular processing scenario, these days, depending on where the client invests, and maybe Jeff can talk about this a little bit, I would expect it to take maybe 18 months from start to finish. So make the investment, file the visa petition, and complete consular processing. If the client is inside the United States, I think it can take about a year. So 18 months if you're pursuing consular processing, about a year if you're inside the United States making your investment, and then applying for your green card. And again, maybe Jeff can touch on this, but that depends a little bit on the specific geographic area where you're investing in the United States. With regards to, predictions and what might happen or might not happen under the Trump administration, I have three kind of general thoughts. One is that there will be stability, meaning that, Ramaswamy and Musk and like the Doge guys, they understand the immigration system. Obviously, there's a big emphasis on lawful immigration. The people in the Trump administration really understand EB-5 because they've used it themselves for some of their real estate development projects. So I think there will be general stability in the EB-5 world. I don't think we'll see processing times go through the roof. I don't think we'll see sort of like unilateral executive type actions that will really impact our EB-5 clients. Number two, clients ask a lot about, again, whether unilaterally the Trump administration can increase the minimum investment amount or increase fees. I don't think that that's going to happen. There might be, you could conceive some type of fee to sort of fund some of the border operations. Right now there's something called the asylum program fee for employers. So the Biden administration, will add an additional fee to employers who are petitioning for employees to fund sort of asylum operations. So you could see that also happening, but on the other side of the coin under the Trump administration. With regards to the minimum investment amount going up, that's already written into the law that will automatically happen towards the end of fiscal year 2027. When the law actually is set to expire. So I don't think that there's going to be a unilateral increase in the minimum investment amount. There is sort of like a technical fix that'll happen or will need to happen to the RIA itself, which is the law that sort of controls the regional center program sometime in 2026. So that might be a chance for Congress to go in and increase the minimum investment amount. But again, I don't think it's going to be unilateral from the Trump administration. And then final thought is that there's going to be an increase in interest in EB-5. And that's because, we'll see a tightening on other avenues for clients to get to the United States, particularly through like the H-1B program, employer-based, both visa and green card categories. And I think we're also going to see backlogs, continue to increase in other green card categories, stay relatively stable in EB-5. So I think we're going to see an increase in interest, which could provoke backlogs in these new, EB-5 categories, particularly for individuals from mainland China and India. So those are my 3 predictions. There's my contact information. Happy to answer any questions in the Q&A. Happy to always, be here, speak with clients, and I'll turn it over to the esteemed Jeff DeSico at this moment.
Thank you, George. Before Jeff starts, I would kindly ask all the participants to please put your questions in the Q&A section, which we'll address right after Jeff finishes on the original center site. Jeff, please go ahead.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you are. My name is Jeff DeSico. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Golden Gate Global. We are an EB-5 regional center, like George just spoke about. And I'm just going to share my screen. Great. Just to give you a little background about us and what our firm has done in our history. So we've been around now in the EB-5 business for 13 years. And we've successfully raised around $800 million in EB-5. Most importantly for us, we've never had a denial at any of those stages that George talked about because of the project. So meaning getting a conditional green card or that first I-526 approval or the permanent green card, the I-829 approval. And the holy grail, sort of what everybody goes for at EB-5. So your investment in EB-5 is typically done as a loan. So hopefully if the project is successful, you'll get your money back in 5 to 7 years when you make the investment. We've been fortunate enough to repay almost $250 million so far to our investors, and we've always been able to repay in full and on time. Part of the reason for that, I think, is so in EB-5 space, George spoke about effectively the regional centers like ours getting a license to sponsor projects. So you do that by different regions of the country. So you can designate a certain area and then launch a project inside that area. For us, we're pretty myopically focused. We do California real estate projects. You'll see other regional centers in the United States where they might control 6 or 7 different geographic regions. They might have a regional center to sponsor projects in New York, and then one in Texas, and then one in California, and one in Michigan. And they control projects in all different areas of the country. And they also might go into different industries. A lot of regional centers will do some real estate projects, then they'll do some infrastructure projects or alternative energy. We don't do that. We believe that we're not smart enough to understand all those industries and all those different regions of the country. So what we do is we focus on California real estate. And the major reason for that is the 2 founders of our company. Mr. Stephen Kay has been a real estate attorney in California for over 50 years, extremely well known. He's worked with every major developer in California, either directly against them or of counsel. And Mr. Willie Brown, who's the former mayor of San Francisco and head of the California Assembly for 20 years, and probably the most beloved politician in all of California. With these 2 gentlemen, we see every quality real estate project that comes through California, and so we get to pick and choose the best ones. Personally, I've been in EB-5 for over 10 years. I've helped directly, probably 1,500 investors, if not more, come to the U.S. from markets outside of China, predominantly India, Vietnam, the Middle East, et cetera. The rest of our firm is quite large for the EB-5 space. We've got about 35 employees all over the country. So we have several offices in India, South Africa, South America, and across the United States, China and Taiwan as well. One other piece about us, so, obviously this is a large investment for everyone. The EB-5 program is overseen by the USCIS. So USCIS is an immigration part of the US government. But EB-5 investments are also securities. So we took it upon ourselves to register Golden Gate Global as a registered broker-dealer. So we are overseen as well, not just by the USCIS, but also by securities regulators, just like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or any other brokerage firm in the United States. So with that, there's an added level of transparency. You can look up my history on something called Broker Check, which is run by a government-affiliated entity. You can look up the firm's past to see, has there been, any violations, et cetera. My entire career is there. So that gives investors who are all around the world who aren't sure exactly who we are, it gives them an extra level of security. And we're only one of 2 regional centers that have actually done that, gone through that process. In terms of EB-5, what does an EB-5 investment look like, right? This is what everyone's probably most curious about. So our job as the regional center is to sponsor these investments. What we do is we go out, we look at hundreds of real estate investment deals that might qualify for EB-5 every year. We do the due diligence. We research the developer. We research the viability of the project. We make sure, third-party assessments of the value of the project, et cetera. Is it feasible? All these types of things. We're underwriting the deal just as a bank would underwrite a deal. Once we go through that process and we have a project that we think we like and we want to sponsor, we create a new limited partnership. That limited partnership, we are the general partner, so we control that limited partnership. Golden Gate Global does. Your investment, each investor technically purchases a percentage of that limited partnership. So if we have 100 investors, every investor will invest $800,000 and then will own 1% of this limited partnership. That limited partnership exists for one reason and one reason only. And this is specified in the documents. You don't give me money and then I decide where to put it. You invest into a specific project. So when you make that investment, into that limited partnership, the money is pooled at an escrow account and then is loaned to a developer. That developer uses those funds to build the project that you've invested in. Again, we don't touch the money. We don't have discretion about when the money goes, where the money goes. The money can only go to that project, and it can only go to that project in accordance with the business plan. There's also a third party who monitors the escrow account that makes sure that those funds are being distributed to the right person for the right needs. As that money goes to the developer or the borrower spends it. As he spends that money, we track the receipts of the spending. All of that spending gets put into an economic model. And at this point, we even have a third-party economist that takes that information about the spending, puts it into this economic model that's approved by the government, and then it produces a number of jobs, right? So these aren't actual workers for the most part, sitting at a job site working. It's an economic model where the impact of the project not just on the project itself, but on the larger community gets taken into account. And then a number of jobs are computed. When the developer is done using that money, usually the investment terms are around 5 years. As long as the project is successful, they repay the money to the escrow account. And then from there is given back to the investors, usually within a week or 2. So as long as this project is built, is viable, and is successful, the developer will repay those funds, and the investors should get their money back. Just to give you a little background about EB-5, in terms of how do you choose a regional center? How do you know where to invest? There have been from my calculations, now there's no central clearinghouse for EB-5 information. This is just my industry experience and knowing what others broadcast in terms of their track record. But there have been probably about $5 billion of successful EB-5 transactions, meaning that money has been repaid to EB-5 investors in full. So the program's been around a while. That's a pretty large amount. That's a large amount of money successfully invested. Throughout the course of EB-5, there have been about 800 regional centers registered. Not all of them are active. In fact, I don't think more than probably 50 or 60 are active right now. But probably of those 800, less than about 30 have actually completed the cycle in EB-5. And of those 30, there are probably 10 or less. I would probably say maybe that's like 5 or 6, that number, but there's no way to be certain, that have repaid more than $200 million. So you'll see the bulk of these repayments are from regional centers that have been around for a long time, that have very solid track records, that have completed the cycle. And this is really important when you're choosing a regional center. We happen to be one of those. We've repaid $250 million. So it's a very small club that has been this successful in the program. So one of the things I would always say to people is, and to use a silly analogy, like you'd never go skydiving with someone who's never done it before, right? You want to make sure the regional center you invest with has gone the full cycle: conditional green card, permanent green card, and repaid investors. The next question you want to ask yourself is the regional center a developer themselves, or are they a sponsor of projects? So Golden Gate Global, we're third party. We do due diligence, we structure, we underwrite, we look for projects. We don't build them, right? So we act as a bank in terms of doing the due diligence and structuring the projects. If something goes wrong, we're on the side of the investor. It's our obligation to sue the developer. We only make money if this developer successfully pays interest on the project. We make money from the interest of the project, that the interest that the developer pays on the loan. So our interest is aligned with you. There are many developer-led regional centers in EB-5 where the developer raises money for themselves. This, it doesn't mean that that's wrong, but it's been problematic in the past, and because there's no one fighting on the side of the investor. So I've seen a little bit less success on the developer-led regional center side than the third-party regional center side. But that's a big question to ask. Who's protecting my interest? Like I mentioned before, you want to make sure they've completed the cycle. Have they fully repaid investors before? Have they had failures, and why? Listen, failures happen, not just in EB-5, but in development and construction. This is a part of life, and your money must be at risk. So there is an element of risk to this and a possibility of failure. So if a company has a failure, it doesn't mean necessarily they're bad. You just want to understand, what was the project that failed before? Why did it fail? What did they learn from that? So that's something important to ask when you ask about track record. And then, this is important for me, is, are they experienced in the region and the industry? I've seen a lot of even great companies in EB-5, and not just in EB-5, but in general, where they've gotten in over their skis, where they think, okay, I can, I've done this project in New York. Now I think I can do the same thing replicated in Texas, or I'm successful. I can switch industries, move into different areas. I don't think that you can be a master of everything. So I'd want to know what kind of, for the specific project, have they had experience in this area, this region? So now you've looked at the regional center, who's the sponsor, and it really comes down to, after you find a quality regional center, you want to find the project. Again, you're investing into a project-specific investment. You're not just giving your money to someone who then decides where to put it. So you want to take these steps to look at, important steps. Who is the actual developer of the project, the sponsor? What's their track record? What's their reputation like? Okay. You want to make sure they've been successful before. If it's a real estate project, where's the location, right? George touched on in EB-5 now, there are two main ways you qualify to sponsor a project. And that is either being in a high unemployment area, which is an area of 1.5 times the national average of unemployment, or a rural area, which is an area of under 20,000 people. The rural projects have expedited processing in under a year. So you've seen a lot of people out there chasing projects in areas that have less than 20,000 people. It's not easy to find. I know we were the last major regional center to have a rural project because we wanted to do a project in California and there wasn't a lot of area for us. So you got to be careful that you're not doing a project in the middle of nowhere that doesn't have any economic viability. So location, location, location. One of the most important pieces to me is, how much equity does the developer have? You want to make sure the developer has a lot to lose in the project, and perhaps more than you, right? That they're fully behind it and they have skin in the game. And then the best way to kind of see the strength of the project is, where do you stand in the capital stack? So if you're developing a project You think about it this way. You're making a loan to the developer. So where are you? So if you're a senior loan, you're just like the bank who holds a mortgage on a house. If something goes wrong, you come in, you take over the house, right? If you don't pay your mortgage, you lose your house. So the strongest position you want to be in as an EB-5 investor is a senior loan. Next would be the second spot, or mezzanine loan, meaning you're subordinate to the senior loan, but you're still ahead of everybody else in the project, okay? So many, if not most, EB-5 projects find themselves in the mezzanine loan space. Third piece is preferred equity, which means you'll have a subordinated loan in front of you and obviously the senior loan in front of you. You might participate in some of the upside of the project, but you're still sitting on top of the developer's equity. And then the last piece would be pure equity. If you're in an EB-5 project with pure equity, you really have no sort of collateral. You're completely at risk and there's not a lot of protections. We've not seen a lot of successful equity or preferred equity projects in EB-5. Most of them have been mezzanine or senior loan. In terms of what EB-5 projects look like, real quick, to give you an idea, good projects are institutional type size projects and types of projects. You know, we're not building a small hotel for $10 million or, you know, a couple of residences. These are large scale projects. Some of our most successful projects, we financed the building of the arena for the Sacramento Kings, the NBA basketball team. We financed more than $100 million on that project. We also financed multifamily communities with Lennar Home Builders, the largest publicly traded home builder in the US, a $50 billion company, and also a master plan community with over 10,000 residences in Oakland, California, in this place called Brooklyn Basin. So large scale projects with really world-class developers is what we aim to get. So just to sum up a couple things, formula for success. Immigration advisor, right? You want someone on the ground that's going to help you with this process. Henley's the best in the world. It's not even a question. So you guys are in the right spot to start. Immigration attorney. You want to make sure you have an attorney who specializes in EB-5, not just someone who's an immigration attorney. EB-5 is its own animal. You want to make sure they've gone through the process and had success. George has been a partner of ours for many years, phenomenal attorney. You know, he won't guarantee you approvals, but I will guarantee you if he takes your case, you'll get an approval. But he won't say that. You want to make sure the regional center has a good track record, right? They've done this before. And then you go down to the project level. So all of these things you want to take into consideration as you go down this path. And I think if you work with top-tiered people, you've got a very, very high probability of success. Those of us in the regional center business who've been around, with you know, who've repaid in the hundreds of millions, you have very few failures among that group. So by starting there, I think you're really at the best point. That is it for my presentation. I'll give you my 2 cents in terms of outlook, and I largely just agree with George on this. You know, the president doesn't have much to do with what happens with EB-5. It's an act of Congress. It's in place till the end of 2027. But I mean, the most important piece for me is to look at what happened during the last Trump presidency. In EB-5, that was the golden era of EB-5. Tens of thousands of applications. So EB-5 not only was, you know, it was unaffected, but it thrived during the first Trump administration. So I think that'll remain unchanged. I do think what we'll see, though, is a slowdown in processing for other visa classes. And perhaps a tightening, at least in the short term. You know, my guess is, being in immigration only for the last 10 years, but my guess is you'll see a tightening up and a slowdown of processing of H-1Bs and other categories. And then maybe after the administration gets their grasp on what's going on, it might loosen up. So I think it's going to be a rough couple of years for non-EB-5 visas. But I think EB-5 is going to be fine and it'll be left untouched. The only piece I would say to you, to the public out there, is EB-5 is slated to get at the end of 2027, when it gets renewed, it gets adjusted for inflation, which is not pretty right now. Just back of the envelope calculations, if we're assuming 5% inflation per year over the last 5 years, the minimum investment would be somewhere around $1,030,000, $1,050,000. So the price is likely to go up significantly by the end of 2027. So if you're looking at this in a 2-year window, I'd probably want to start it before that. And that is it for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, George. Now, my favorite part. We have so many questions, and I think we have 15 minutes left. We will try to answer all of them. So the first one to George. Can you buy an existing company for the same investment amount that has 10 or more employees already? Question from Josh.
No, I mean you can buy that, but it won't qualify you for EB-5. That's because they have to be 10 new full-time jobs, an emphasis on new, meaning that the immigration agency, which is called USCIS, will look at how many employees there were, say, a year before you executed the purchase, and then how many, and then, use that as a baseline, and then calculate how many jobs you've created from there. So long story short, you can't identify a business that has 11 employees or 11 positions. Just to also be clear, you don't have to keep the same employees. I mean, if not working, you can fire the employees, but and just get new employees. But no, you can't buy a business with 11 employees and have those count as new jobs created in the United States for EB-5 purposes.
Okay, thanks. Can you clarify the reference made to the fact that in 2027 the law is set to expire? Does this mean there will be a definite increase in the amount of investment as of then?
Yeah. So as Jeff just mentioned, the law that governs the regional center program expires in 2027. There's a grandfathering provision which says anyone who made their investment and filed before the expiry date, well, actually not the expiry date, before March of 2026, which is that technical fix that I was talking about, like for whatever reason, the grandfathering clause doesn't align with the expiry of the regional center program legislation. So that is a chance for Congress to go in and sort of stitch that up. But basically, anyone who invested and filed before March of 2026, as of today, is subject to the same set of rules and procedures, et cetera, that applied at that time. There's a grandfather clause. So people are protected if they make their investment and file before March of 2026. Having said that, all else being equal, as Jeff mentioned, it's pegged to inflate. The increase in the minimum investment amount is pegged to inflation. So it ratchets up automatically. So there's no sort of question about whether or not there's going to be an increase in the minimum investment amount in March of 2027.
Okay, thank you. Next question to Jeff. How much visibility and transparency we as investors have during the investment process?
Yeah, during the investment process, so you'll get offering documents which will detail everything, the project, everything involved in the project. Your immigration attorney's job is to make sure the project qualifies via immigration, but not via business plan. By a business plan, that's your job. I would always say seek out help from financial advisors, read through the documents, help them to help assess the risk. Once you make the investment from our firm, you'll get quarterly updates, which will have things like the third-party economist reports, so you know how many jobs have been created, so you can feel secure that immigration is happening for you. And then also third-party construction monitor reports, where there'll be site visits, pictures, detailed spending list, et cetera. So you'll have all that information on a quarterly basis.
Okay, another question for you, Jeff. Actually, it's 3 questions. So the first one, what is the ROI, return of investment, of the investment?
Yeah. Almost all the successful transactions in EB-5 history have had a return on investment of about, 1/4 to 0.5%. So you're not going to make money in EB-5. You're going to make just enough to be annoying to fill out a tax return. So most of our projects are structured about 1/4%, and most successful EB-5 projects in history have been structured around that kind of return. Your return is the green card.
Okay. Is there any lock-in period? Let's paraphrase it. What is the lock-in period of your current project?
Yeah, most projects right now in the market are probably around a 5-year maximum. So they'll be structured something like a 3-year loan to a developer, and then the developer will have an option to extend up to 2 more years. So the average in the industry, and again, that's the developer's option. So the average is about 5 years right now.
Okay. The next one I would address to George. After the EB-5 approval, how do we go for a job or start a business?
After the EB-5 what, sorry?
Approval. I
Well,
think what
again,
is
that
meant is the 5 to 6 approval.
yeah. So again, that depends on whether you're in the US and pursuing adjustment of status, or whether you're outside the US and going through something called consular processing. So if you're outside the US and you're going through consular processing, when you'll enter the US with a visa in your passport, and that'll automatically trigger the issuance of a social security number and the issuance of your green card. So that's when you can, go for a job or apply for a job or whatever, start a business, whatever it is. If you're inside the US and you apply for adjustment of status, again, you get work and travel authorization. So as soon as you get that work authorization and the social security number, you can, be on payroll at a company. Before that, you could have started your own business, and there are some rules about what counts as unauthorized employment, things like that. So you want to, consult with an attorney. But suffice to say, if you're in the U.S. pursuing adjustment of status, you get work and travel authorization much quicker. If you're pursuing consular processing, once you actually enter as a lawful permanent resident, that's when you can apply for jobs, open a business, etc.
Thanks. Next question to Jeff. Do all investments have returns? What is the time? I think we've covered it already. Another question to Jeff. If the green card is rejected for any reason, is the money will be refunded?
Yeah, most regional centers, including us, have a denial guarantee, which is why we lean heavily on people like George, attorneys like George, to make sure that the investor is going to get an approval. So if you get a denial for any reason other than you're committing fraud or misrepresenting your information on your source of funds, things like that, your funds will be returned to you within 60 days generally.
Okay, thanks. Next question to George. Regarding the source of funds and the fruit and the seed example, if I use a dividend distribution with resolution dated from 2023, but the actual liquid money comes from income my company made last month, would that be a problem? Can you see the question?
Yeah, let me scroll up. I don't think that should, for lots of different reasons, you may declare a dividend at one time and then actually pay it out at another time, whether it's like tax planning or, fiscal year concerns. So we would just want to understand that from the client, like, hey, why did you declare it in 2023 and then not pay it out until today? But assuming that it aligns with the financial statements and tax filings and bank statements and the like, there's no reason why per se, the declaration of a dividend in 1 year and the actual paying out happening in another year would preclude the client from using those funds to make their EB-5 qualifying investment.
Okay, next to Jeff. How to ensure investment is safe and return is obvious after 3 to 5 years? Is there a fixed ROA during the time? Well, I think we can cover the first part of the question. We have the second one covered already.
Yeah, the guarantee you're going to want to look at is your position in the capital stack and the amount of equity the developer has. So the higher percentage of income of let's say if a project costs $100 million to build and the developer has $50 million in it, and you're a senior loan, that's great coverage, right? If the development fails, the developer has to lose, he's going to lose more money than you. So you feel secure that he's going to make a good faith effort to build something, and you have real collateral behind the deal. So what you want to do is you're looking to make sure the more money the developer has in the project, the better. And then the better position you are in the capital stack, senior loan, mezzanine loan, preferred equity, et cetera. You want to be higher up, closer towards that senior loan. And then from there, it's basic due diligence, the viability of the project and quality of the developer. right? Who's this developer? Has he done this before? Who's the team assembled? Do they have enough money to complete the project? All these kinds of things.
Thanks, Jeff. Next one. Can you give the details about tax implication? We are not tax advisors, unfortunately, but maybe George can just say a few words on implication of becoming a U.S. resident.
Yes, you will be taxed on your global income. And that's as of the date that you become if you're going through consular processing, that's as the date that you enter the U.S. as a lawful permanent resident. If you're doing adjustment of status from inside the United States, a little more complicated. So you're going to want to work with a good tax advisor, and you're definitely going to want to engage in something called pre-immigration tax planning. Very common. You've got plenty of paved road ahead of you to figure that out.
Thanks. Next one. In case someone withdraws from the EB-5 program during the process for some reason and for changing their mind in relocation, would they get funds back? I think Jeff covered this already. Next one to George. Which point in time is decisive with regards to minors to be included? Do they have to be minors at the start or at the end of the process?
Yeah, great question. So first, defining minor is a child that is under the age of 21 and unmarried. And when do they need to be under the age of 21 and unmarried is the date that you file your visa petition. So basically the date that you start the process, not the date when it's approved, not when your actual green card is issued. There's something called the Child Status Protection Act, which basically, even though we all know that biologically your children will continue to age, much as we wish that weren't the case, unless you have children in diapers, as I do, they'll continue to biologically age. For immigration purposes, they stay the age that they were as of the date that you filed the visa petition, even if it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years for USCIS to approve the visa petition. So basically, you lock in their age when you make your investment and you file the visa petition.
Thank you. Next one. Do you have local partners to help with language of local documents? Sean, yes, we have people that can assist people, employees, colleagues, and partners everywhere in the world. Just reach out to me directly and we will help you out, definitely. So we have 3 more questions, just about in time. Zoltan is asking, if I invest at least $800K in the US stock market, would it count?
No. That's because the job creation requirements, it has to be, if you're counting jobs that have been created indirectly, you have to make an investment with a regional center. So no, if you just allocate $800,000 to US equities, or in your Robinhood account or whatever it is, no, that won't qualify you.
Okay, question from Ms. Margarita Zubkova. Children from previous marriage of the spouse will be eligible to apply?
Yes. It depends. Well, it depends a little bit. But generally speaking, yes. I only say it depends a little bit because the question was, I think, to children of the spouse from a prior marriage. So I'm not sure who the principal visa petitioner is, but in any event, I would say it's about 99% likely that whoever's asking this question is going to be in a relationship and in a household where the children will qualify as dependents. They'll qualify as stepchildren. Long story short, stepchildren count as children, meaning dependents of the principal visa petitioner. So yes, even though they're not, biological children of, that couple, they should count as stepchildren.
Thanks. Well, there were only 3 questions. Now we have another 6.
Nice.
If the minor is the actual EB-5 applicant, 18 years old student currently in the US, funds can be gifted with proper tracking. Any issues, George?
No issues. There is something called the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. So I think depending on the state, and I think most of them are 21. Jeff, maybe you can correct me on that. But if you're under the age of 21, you might not be, it might not be possible for you to be legally bound by the terms of the contract that you're entering into as you acquire these securities, which they are. But there's something called the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act, whereby the parent who's gifting the funds to the son or daughter to make the investment can act as custodian. And then once the child turns 21, he or she becomes, the full lawful owner. So basically, it's almost like a trust. The parent holds the investment as the custodian for the child, and that's fine. That solves the issue as to whether or not the child can be legally bound by the contract, which is a requirement for EB-5 purposes. But yes, moving the funds and gifting them to that child, that's something we deal with all the time, as young as 12, 10, 8 years old. So 18 is no problem.
Thanks. Question from Salman. Question to Jeff. Investment via escrow account in a development project, does it have the option of investor having a sale purchase agreement of properties equivalent of the invested amount as a result?
I think what you're asking is possible that you have tied directly to collateral inside like a property. So if you put your money into escrow and then the money goes in, you get a property in exchange. That's actually not allowed in EB-5. So you can't just purchase a property like some other projects and other countries' programs, as Dimitro knows, like Portugal and other places where you can buy property. EB-5 is not that. You can have collateral, but it's based off of your investment along with the group from the limited partnership level. So nothing specific to you is the answer.
Thanks. Another question from Zoltan. Could you please clarify, do regional centers assist in raising money as well once the project is found?
Yeah, that's what we do. So we have two different pieces of the business. One is our underwriting team, which goes out, looks at the projects, and goes through the entire process of underwriting and doing the due diligence. And the other is the sales team, which goes out and finds the investors and works with them. And we rely heavily on partners like Henley, to find, with their expertise in immigration, to find investors for us all over the world.
Thanks. And the last question we have from Kiki, and it goes to George. I think we've covered it, but if you just repeat a few more sentences on how long does it take to get a conditional green card and the permanent green card, the timeline.
Sure. Yeah, highlights an important point, which is that the initial green card is valid for 2 years. After that 2-year period, you make a subsequent filing to demonstrate that the 10 jobs actually were created. And so the question is, how long does it take to get that first green card? If you're inside the United States pursuing adjustment of status, again, depending on where you invest, I think about 12 to 18 months. If you're outside the US pursuing your green card through consular processing, I would say 18, maybe 24 months. Then how long does it take to get what I call the full final 10-year green card? The processing times historically have been quite long, but we're seeing them go extremely fast now. So like 2 months, which is great. And I think that trend will continue as, if Doge, actually does come into being and they are looking at efficiencies and, how to make things operationally more streamlined throughout the federal government. I think that immigration is a great place for them to do that. USCIS has worked pretty hard, it seems, to sort of meet the expectations that Congress has laid out. And so seeing these 829s, which are the petition to get the full final 10-year green card, go really fast, that bodes really well both for USCIS in terms of Doge, coming to see what they're doing, which is the Department of Governmental Efficiency, if you're not, following, and and also for clients, of course.
One more question. Can the green card be a pathway to citizenship? How long would that take, and what is the process?
Yes, it absolutely is a pathway to citizenship. How long does it take? You look at the past 5 years since you've had your green card, and you say, okay, in these 5 years, have I spent at least 30 months cumulatively of the past 60 months? So you take out your passport and you count your days. Okay, have I spent 30 months physically in the US? Yes. Okay, that's one consideration. 2, during the past 5 years, have I taken any one trip that lasted more than 6 months? So did I leave on January 1st and not come back until August 1st? If yes, that restarts the 5-year clock. You also have to have good moral character, and you have to pass, like a written oral English exam and some, answer some civics questions and things like that. But those are the 2 big time considerations. 5 years, 30 months cumulatively, no trips in excess of 6 months during that time period. Other question we get a lot, does the initial 2-year green card count? Yes. So you count from the, that first day that you get the green card, and you look out 5 years from there.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
No problem,
Rubaya. Thank you for a detailed answer. Yeah, thank you for joining. I think we've covered all the questions. Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, George. Thanks to each and every one who joined our webinar today. We'll see you next year. This is our last global webcast in 2024, and I hope to see each and every one of you next year. I'm wishing everybody wonderful holidays, you and your families, and everybody have a good one.
Thanks, Dimitro. So long, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Emil.
Ciao.